Welcome to Freya's Fairy Tales, where we believe fairy tales are both stories we enjoyed as children and something that we can achieve ourselves. Each week, we will talk to authors about their favorite fairy tales when they were kids, and their adventure to holding their very own fairy tale in their hands. At the end of each episode, we will finish off with a fairy tale or short story read as close to the original author's version as possible. I am your host, Freya Victoria. I'm an audiobook narrator that loves reading fairy tales, novels, and bringing stories to life through narration. I am also fascinated by talking to authors and learning about their why and how for creating their stories. We have included all of the links for today's author and our show in the show notes. Today is part 2 of 2, where we are talking to Dallas Ryan about her novels. After today, you will have heard about writing from a young age, prioritizing where to put the money you do have when starting out, what to do about reviews, learning the language of books, and dealing with family and friends reading your books. Unbroken, Book 2 of the Gladewater series. Once charmed by a small-town girl, a big city doctor doesn't stand a chance. Attraction sizzles hotter than a skillet, but trouble from his past could put their love and her life at risk. Cafe owner Maggie Wade has a magic touch when it comes to her business and caring for her friends. Her own love life? That's where she falters, thanks to an incident long ago that shattered her self-image. Then Dr. Zane Savage comes to town. The handsome Dallas neurologist can't seem to take his warm whiskey eyes off her. Their attraction sizzles. But Maggie's been burned before. Ever since, she's kept her heart away from all sources of heat. Zane existed on a steady diet of Barbie doll types. Plastic, temporary, disposable. Until he meets Maggie. One taste of her sweet smile, sparkling brown eyes, and warm personality, and he's a goner. So what if he's been a player in the past? Maggie makes him want to be a better man. Despite the distance between them, their relationship takes flight, and Maggie's newfound confidence soars. But when a piece of trash from Zane's past blows back into his life and refuses to be shaken off, the strain puts more than Maggie's trust at risk. It puts her life in danger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I look at it and I'm all for, and I tell when I have people beta reading for me
Mm-hmm.
um, for this new book, and which is a whole nother, there's a whole nother lexicon that you have to learn
Mm-hmm.
when you start writing. Because when I wrote my first book, I didn't know any of this thing. I didn't know, never heard of an ARC reader, a beta reader. I didn't know what developmental editing was, so I started getting some.
I didn't know till
I didn't know
TikTok.
any other. Yeah, I didn't know how to do a TikTok. I didn't know how to do Instagram. I mean, I didn't know any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been a huge learning curve,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So, but I always tell my betas, I'm like, okay, don't just tell me it's wonderful and that you love it. If something is not working, that information is just or more helpful than you just telling me you love it and fixing
Yeah.
the typos, that come through it. Because if you don't like, you're the reader. If you
Yeah.
don't like it, why don't you like it? And I may or may not change it. It may be because something else is coming up that they don't know about, so it's got to be there.
Yeah.
But it may be something. Oh, you're right. That sounds kind of weird, and they want to reword that or fix
Well, there's a
it, or
difference between one person having a problem with it and everybody saying this
everybody.
is a
Right?
problem, or,
Exactly.
a large
Yeah.
majority. It doesn't have to be
Right.
everybody, but that's obviously
If
different.
several of them come up saying, yeah, you look at it and go, okay, I need to look at that. If
Yeah.
one person says it, it's probably just opinion,
Yeah.
and I look at it and go, yeah or nay.
Yeah. So, what do you do to help sell your books? Like, what does your promotion process look like? Or not necessarily the process,
Um,
but what do you do?
yeah, mostly I'm on. I have a Facebook page,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't find that to be as productive as Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm trying also to move into TikTok to advertise
Mm-hmm.
um,
And
because
YouTube?
that seems to be. And I just started a YouTube channel which has two things on it. So everybody go check them and like them and subscribe. So so I'm trying to learn all these, and learn it all. I mean, because every one of them is different, and how you
Mm-hmm.
create content. for it.
Right.
And so it takes a lot of time, and I resisted. I mean, they pulled me kicking and screaming to TikTok because I love TikTok. I love watching TikTok, but
Mhm.
I was like,
Doing
oh
it
my god, I
yourself.
figure out how to do it, how to figure out how to do this. I don't know how to do it. And so, but they're like, no, you have to come on. You got to get on. I'm like, okay. So now it's kind of fun. But after a while, I've got to try to come up with new things.
Yeah.
You know, and not be just the same old thing every time. But the music helps. I like figuring out the music to go with whatever I'm doing. So that's
Yeah.
the fun part of TikTok.
I think I've done all of
But I
one
have it
music
figured out.
thing. Mine are
I
typically
think
just me
I
talking.
do it most on Canva. Yeah. See, and I haven't done any of me on TikTok yet,
Mhm.
and my actual face. I'm resisting that because I just for professional purposes for my
Mhm.
other job.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want clients that I don't want to know that because I write a pen. So
Yeah.
I don't want clients to see my face on TikTok and go, "Oh, she writes smut. Okay, we can do that." We can do that.
This is
It's
why
probably
I don't
not a good
narrate
thing.
under my name.
Um, for some of them,
Okay, so you're doing
yeah,
Instagram and
under
TikTok
a name, and that's why.
mostly. And how are those
Yeah.
do you seem to have figured it out so far or still trying different things to figure it out?
Um, it's getting there. The Instagram, I've got over 1,000 followers now, so that's exciting.
Mhm.
Um, and figuring out the hashtags, and
Yeah.
I built up a pretty good base on Instagram. I've met a lot of good people there.
Mhm.
Like get all my ARC readers and my beta readers, off of off of Instagram, and built up a group of people from there,
Mhm.
and met some great authors too.
Mhm.
That's another thing I found on Instagram with indie authors is everybody that I've met so far, I haven't met one not been like this. Have been so supportive and helpful, and you'll be in a
Mhm.
group and go, "How do you do that?" I don't know how to do that. And you're like, okay, this is how you do it, and they're just willing to do anything, to help you out from wherever you are, even if
Yeah.
it sounds like a stupid question that you should have known before you started. But you don't. You just start writing. You think, I'm just going to write a book. And then you don't realize that 90% of writing the book, marketing the
Yeah.
book, nice and supportive and helpful,
The
and
writing is the
go out of
easy
their way
part.
to make sure you exactly. The writing is the easy part. Never would have thought that. But yeah, so in TikTok, it's just a matter of you can't, I think it's 1,000 people you have to have, which
Mhm.
congratulations, you got your 1,000
Thank you.
followers.
I did my first live
You
this
can't
morning.
monetize. Yay! You can't monetize until you hit 1,000, or you can't do a group,
No, monetize, I think you have to
earn
have,
anything.
like, 10 or 15,000. It's, like, a lot bigger.
You
Um,
have to, there's something I think maybe it was a group thing you couldn't do till you hit 1,000 because somebody was going to do something, asked me if I wanted to do it with them, and I couldn't because I didn't have 1,000
it's the
followers
lives.
yet.
Because the lives you see
Yeah,
some
the
people
lives.
do group lives, you can't if you can't live at all, you can't
Yeah,
group live
can't do that.
either, so, yeah, I had this
Yeah,
morning,
the
it
best
was like, "Do you
problem.
wanna join so and so's live?" And I'm like, "No, I don't. I don't know who that is."
I get a lot of those, and I'm like, no.
I also got tagged in a
But yeah,
voiceover
so that's
video, and I'm like, "Voiceover doesn't apply." Like, that's a different ball game. I don't play that game. I play the narration game. So,
yeah. So who we don't know
yeah.
what the differences are sometimes. But yeah, so that's it's all such a big learning curve.
Yeah.
So with every book, you get a little better, and hope
Yes.
that people, they're new to see your latest book will go back and pick up your previous books.
Right. So, do you have
That's the hope.
any tips or tricks or advice for anyone just getting started out?
Well, the biggest one I've already said is just write it. Keep
Mhm.
writing, no matter what.
Mhm.
And two, I mean, you really have to think about marketing before you're even done with the book.
Right.
Um, so So if you can get a cover done, decide on your cover early. You
Mhm.
can do things with that, ramping up to your what's coming up.
Mhm.
Um, do lots of teasers, work in progress things. I
Mhm.
try to throw out like little paragraphs or dialogue of whatever I'm working on every once in a while,
Mhm.
to get people interested in what's coming up, despite other than just cramming the ones you've already got out down their throats,
Right.
which you have to do.
Right.
But and yet, it got to be consistent. If you throw one thing up there, and then don't come back for 3 weeks, you're
They
not going
forget
to
who
build
you
a
are.
following that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you've got to build that following and answer everybody. I mean, I've only heard of a couple people this has happened to, but it just floors me. Like somebody will reach out in a DM or something and about your book or make some comment, or I always answer. I answer everything,
Mhm.
and it's not like I'm overwhelmed with things right now, but I do because it makes a difference because these people are taking the time to read your book.
Right.
And, depending on how fast you read, that may take a week or more for them to get through,
Mhm.
something that you wrote. So be appreciative, you know, of
The
all
only
the
ones
feedback
I
that you get.
delete are the spammy ones. I don't answer those.
Yeah.
Like, I just got one that was
Yeah. No,
like,
I don't. I've gotten
"Your
to where I don't
page."
answer those either.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just got one, "Your Patreon doesn't accept Bitcoin." Oh,
So,
okay. I accept other forms of payment. Like,
yeah, pick something.
I'm guessing there's some scam with Bitcoin and Patreons. I don't know. I don't.
Probably. And I get people that, oh, I'd love to review your book. And my first thing now is how much?
Yeah.
Because and I'm like, I'm not paying for reviews at this point.
Yeah, I get that
I'm
for
just,
podcasts too. They're like, "Promote it on this one," and then you message that
yeah,
one and it's like, "Oh, we
oh,
charge, whatever
yeah,
for
well, whatever.
however
And
many
I'm like,
days."
no, like I'm not doing that at this point. I've got enough people that are willing to read it and review it for free.
Yeah, for podcasts,
Um,
I advertise on Facebook. Well, it does Facebook and Instagram and Messenger, like all those 3 places. So I have it set for like I'm not gonna spend a fortune. I have like $5 a day set. I have 2 different podcasts, $5 a day a piece, and that's it. Like I don't
yeah,
I don't do
because it
anything
breaks
else.
up fast. Yeah,
Yeah.
when you do it, I've learned through doing Facebook ads.
Yeah. So I'm
You
sure when I eventually do release, I'll
Even
put
if you
more
set it
money into my own books, but for podcasts, I'm like,
right.
I don't know how many people are listening off that anyways, so
You can, yeah. I mean, you can only do what you can do, and there's limited funds. You have to, and that's another thing when you're getting ready to market is look at what's going to give you the most bang for your buck. Now,
Mhm.
if you are really funny and you're out there and you don't mind being on TikTok and you can do funny TikToks and to promote your book,
Mhm.
like what is it? It's Diana Bungle, I think her name is. She does the smut hood. She's hilarious. And
Oh, Dougal,
Dougal,
Dougal is the
yeah,
last name.
Dan Dougal.
I don't think the first name is Diane.
Is it Diane or is it
She always has the smut
never?
shirts.
Yeah, the smut hood shirt. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is great. And if you're that person, yeah, put your time into TikTok.
Mhm.
You know, if you like to do your own reviews and build that book community, Instagram is a great place to do that. You just
Mhm.
have to decide what you're most comfortable with and what's going to take because it takes up a huge chunks of time,
Yeah.
to do the marketing part of it. But you have to do it because you want people to read your book
Right. You don't
ultimately.
you won't get readers. Well, you'll get very, very few readers of people
Yeah,
just scrolling through that stumble across it.
yeah. And I still haven't mastered hashtags. I don't know what I'm making stuff up as I go with
I
the
actually
hashtag
found
thing. But
it's a hashtag generator, so you'll put in,
oh
like,
yeah,
say, like, book, romance, and, like, you'll put in, like, a few, and then it'll give you recommendations on, like, here's
oh I
similar
need
ones that
that.
people use. And it's, like, a website, and so I just have it bookmarked on my phone so that I can just, like, click on it and put
Serious.
it
You
in.
need to send me that because I need that thing. I'm just making stuff up as I go. Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
yeah, so that's I found that last year sometime, and so that's what I use now for, like, every podcast episode that I do, I'll do,
Yeah,
relevant hashtags, and it's specific to Instagram. So, like, it's
cool.
pulling from Instagram
Instagram.
stuff that's
Yeah,
working. But yeah, so that works well, and you can say, if you have, like, your own that you've made up, like, say you have your name as a hashtag that you use, you can say, "Oh, I only need
yeah,
29 instead of 30," and it does it for you.
cool.
Or
Yeah,
you
I
can
need
go through
that.
and take out I've had to take out some that, like, you'll put in romance and you'll get these, like, really weird ones that have nothing to do with what you're doing, so
You're
I need to manually adjust what hashtags you're giving
goes
me.
out. Yeah, I gotta read them, but don't just take all of them. It's a
Yeah.
good tip. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, a friend of mine, another author friend of mine came up with the one, Hallmark After Dark. Because Hallmark, you can't put any sex, in the hall if you're writing for
Yeah, it's
Hallmark.
all
You're,
clean.
you're lucky if you get kissing. It's all clean, clean.
Yeah.
And so somebody said that to her that her books were like Hallmark After Dark, and I'm like, that's a great because it's small town. We both write small town romance,
But it's got
and
stuff in
it's
there.
definitely not clean, but it's got
Yeah.
stuff in there. So we're like Hallmark After Dark. That's brilliant. So we're trying to make that.
It's like back in the day, or probably not back in the I haven't had cable in forever, but the Cartoon Network would do the
Mhm.
Adult Swim or whatever at
Yeah,
night where it was, you know, the
the ones that the
not
children
kid
shouldn't be
approved.
watching. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember that.
So it's like that Hallmark after. I like that. That's a good hashtag.
Yeah,
But yeah, so you
I
could
thought it
add
was
that.
brilliant.
You could add that into your thing. Now, some hashtags I'll put in there, like, what is it? Narrator. I don't think it recognizes narrator as like a valid hashtag. So I always have to like add a few narrator hashtags on there. But for the most part, it does a good job of giving valid recommendations that
Patience.
help it get to more people.
Well, anything helps, I tell you.
Yeah.
You should
Oh
just
yeah, I
never
max
know.
those out every time. 30, well, every like big one, like book related one, I always make sure I max it out for, max engagement.
Yeah. Well, that's what you need, 'cause you're always wanting to pick up new people
Mhm.
that are relevant,
Yes.
that are not just trying to date you on Instagram.
Ugh.
Like,
Hey,
those people.
beautiful. How are you?
Yeah. Or if you ever give us this, "Hello, dear." Okay, automatic no.
I had one
No, I will
comment
not
on one of
engage
my
you.
TikTok videos, and it was some like super smarmy like comment on my thing, and I commented back, and I was like, "That's funny. You don't look like my husband, because like that's the only person that should be saying that kind of stuff to me." And then I don't
Right?
remember he commented back, and I'm like, "Dude, I'm not interested. Like this is not gonna
Yeah,
happen."
dude, take the hint. Yeah, not even, not even.
That is another reason for creating pseudonyms. So I have like, my real life that I have to
Yeah,
be like, professional and all of this and have background checks run occasionally. And then I have my two
yeah.
pseudonyms that I use that are like, one is the nicer, the public domain books, and the nonfiction and the Christian fiction. And then there's the Freya Victoria that's all the
Everything else.
spicy stuff. Yeah. So I kid with the author, the first spicy book author that I got, I kid with her that like she's the reason that this name had to come into being, because she's like, but I have a she said she has a what did she say? 50 Shades of Grey like book, like inspired by or like that type of
Yeah,
content. And she is like, is that gonna be okay? And I'm like, we're gonna create a different name so we can have all
into
of your
that one.
stuff under the same name.
Same name. You can't do that. I know. Some of it you're just like, okay. Yeah, I've got a couple of things working that's up there. And I'm like, okay, I'll have to have another different name for that one because
Yeah. Well, and a lot
I'm
of
not putting
authors
them.
do. I don't intend to have like all of my stuff will be spicy, so we're just gonna throw it all under Freya Victoria and call it a day. And as long as none of my family ever help me move and see the books in my house, we're good.
Yeah, I
Otherwise,
had relatives read. I had relatives uh, buy my first book, and especially one, my uncle, he's like in his 80s, bought it, and I was like, okay, one, the
don't read
bad
it.
guy, the bad guy in the first book his, is his name. And I said, one, tell him that
It's not
that
on him.
it's not based on him. I just used his name. Don't panic. And two, apparently he didn't I was told he didn't finish reading it because it wasn't his cup of tea. And I was like, "Well, I could have told him that to begin with.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for buying it anyway." Um, but yeah, pass it on to somebody that's gonna enjoy it. I'll have no
Yeah.
trouble with that. But it was funny. I was like, "Oh my god." My kids who are well, one of them is grown, and I can't get her to read it for nothing. And, she's like,
Yeah,
"I don't
my
know, maybe
mom's like,
I'll
"I
write an
can't read
act."
it."
And my husband won't even read it. My husband has still hasn't read my books, hasn't read them yet. I'm like, "Fine,
My
whatever."
husband has
Yeah, but my
listened
daughter's really
to
funny. She's like, "No, I
the
don't wanna know that."
one. Yeah, my husband has listened to the one audiobook, and there's no spicy content in that book, but the one because I begged him, like, "I need someone else to listen to this
Listen to
besides
this.
me." So and then he listened to the first one, and then he didn't listen to the next 2, and I'm like, "Come on, dude, like, whatever."
Yeah, I know. It's like it's the funniest. Your family, the ones you think would be like all over the place, you're just like, whatever.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
like,
intend
"Look,
to tell. My
think about."
mom and my sister and my best friend know. Nobody else knows. Like, they don't know what name I use. They know that I narrate audiobooks, but they don't
Yeah.
know what name I narrate under, so they can't. Oh, my sister-in-law knows. Because my sister-in-law was like, "Hey, I wanna know," and I'm like, "Cool, don't tell your parents." And she's like, "Okay, cool." And so I'm like, just know that I do some spicy books. I had done a couple erotica ones at that point, and I'm like, just make sure you read the blurbs because I'm not going to be held responsible
Well, for what I have to say.
if you
Right,
accidentally
perfect.
get an erotica and you freak out. So the first book that she gets is literally the dirtiest book that I have narrated. And I'm like, did you read the blurb?
Told
She's like, you
you.
did good. I'm like, oh my God.
It's like, "How about I didn't write it? I just read it." And
Yeah.
you're like,
But
well, that's a it's because you never know. But it's funny because we have every year we have a beach trip that we go on with some girlfriends and
mhm.
I go on. And so this year I took both books. There's well, I wonder so and they weren't passed around. So that was fun because we got to discuss. Everybody got to discuss their favorite scenes out of which book, and I get the eyebrow raising. If they were reading something, I'm like,
Yeah.
"What scene are you reading?"
I had my best friend Alpha reading for me, and she says spicy books, but clearly based on what I'm writing,
We're
she reads
not.
very mild books because she gets to like, they finally do it for the first time. And she sends me this meme that's like someone fanning herself, and I'm like, well, I can tell where you're at in the book. And she's like, I've never read anything like that. I'm like, yeah, maybe
Wait,
we need
really?
to like ease you into
You into
it.
something else
Yeah.
first, yeah. Ease
I'm
you
like,
into the spice.
we need a scale. What's the worst that you've read? And she tells me, and I'm like, oh my God,
God,
no,
okay.
that's not
That's
even
not
bad
even
at all.
close. I know,
I'm like,
like,
I'm
the
over
first
here reading like Sierra Simone, and
oh my goodness,
like,
yeah. If
I'm
yeah,
like,
if you cannot
we're
handle
not on
Sierra
the same
Simone,
plane.
yeah, exactly. I'm not on the Sierra Simone plane yet, but, we're trying.
I
But yeah,
don't
the first
know.
book
I've never read anything else like. I don't even know who else is up. I read that
uh,
based on
pre
Deirdre. Is it Deirdre on TikTok? The lady with the curly gray hair. Or the wavy gray
yeah,
hair.
yeah.
She had recommended or was like talking about one of the books, and then there was this other lady that like went on a long car trip and asked for recommendations and talked about the Priest series. And so I'm like,
Yeah, I
okay,
listened to all that on audio, yeah.
we're like, I'm gonna get it and I'm gonna read it. And so I did and was like, I've never read anything like that before. So I don't know who else writes like that, but
Yeah, plenty of people.
yeah.
Yeah, but she's very good. I listened to all hers on audiobook, so it's like, "Whew, okay, I'm in the car. I need to go get a drink now." But yeah, it's so funny, and I'm in awe because I can remember when I was writing Collide,
Mhm.
it was a pretty slow burn kind of book because it's a second chance thing. They were high school sweethearts. They meet
Mhm.
back up as adults and have to get over a bunch of history,
Yeah.
before anything happens. So I got to my first sex scene, and that was the hardest scene I've ever written anywhere ever.
Mhm.
I had to rewrite that first thing. I got to my editor. I was so proud of it the first time I was like, "Oh my god, I got through this thing. It sounds pretty good. I'm happy." She reads it and she's like, "No, way too cliche, blah 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 blah." Then you go through and rewrite it. And it's just like torture rewriting the thing. So I felt like I'm happy with how it came out finally, but I was like, "Oh my god, are you kidding me? You don't love that scene. I have to rewrite it." again. So I rewrote that thing like 5 times before what ended up in the book, you know, to to get it right. I was like, "Oh." And now the second book, Unbroken, now they meet up, they're a new couple, so
Mhm.
they get into things a little bit faster. So
Yeah.
that was a little bit easier. Once you get going, it gets a little easier to do. But that
Yeah.
first one, man, I'll
Well, the
never
more
forget
you
writing
do
that
it
first series.
too.
Yeah, you
Yeah, I
get
remember
used
the
to it. And then
first
the third book, the first chapter is basically so it gets started in the first chapter. So yeah, it builds.
Yeah, so it's a little bit weird like when I'm reading for a narration, so like I do spicy books and so like not all, but some. And it's like it's more clinical when you're like reading for through it for a narration cuz you're like how am I going to do this to make it come across believable?
Right.
But as far as, like, having to redo it, I did, yesterday, I did the big, like, main character like, the big, saddest main character dying scene, and I
Oh,
send it to the author, and I say, "I'm very proud of the way this came out, so you're not allowed to poo-poo on it because, like, I don't wanna redo it. It came out
yeah,
exactly
it's
how it
too
was in
hard.
my head."
Too hard. Don't make me redo it.
Yeah, and tears. There were actual like, I got to the page with
Oh,
that on it, and I was, like, already tears were coming because 'cause I'm like, "I know it's coming, oh no."
I know it's coming. I know. Yeah, I don't want to write people dying. Bad. That's one thing why I've liked. Excuse me. Getting in the romance genre because I want your happily ever after.
Yeah.
You
Now
know,
I
I mean, I
have
want big
read
feelings
romance
through
that
the
they
thing,
die.
but I don't. Well, Nicholas Sparks, everybody dies. I
He's
mean,
super
and we had
mild,
this.
okay? He doesn't count.
No, we had this, but yeah, but we had this conversation all the time about Nicholas Sparks in the romance community. A
Mhm.
lot of people are like, he's not a romance author because somebody it's not a happy ever after at the end. You know,
Yeah.
somebody always dies. I'm like, I
Yeah.
know that's true. Somebody always dies in this book. What's up with that?
Now the one thing that I do say he does well, because there are a lot of, like, men that write sex scenes that do it and you're just like, "Ew."
Or cringe.
He
Yeah,
he
no,
does do those well. Like,
hmm
it is
he
not
does.
cringy the way that he does those, but yeah,
And
it
he
is
does
always
all the
sad.
feels, it just
Yeah.
sweeps you up in it, which is a good thing. But yeah, I'm like, I don't want them to die at the end. Please quit making them die.
And they don't have to. Now, I don't remember who the author was. I read one where it was like she was in this weird triangle. Like she loved 2 guys, but like she really wanted to be with the one guy and like it was this
Mhm.
whole weird thing, but then like the one guy ends up dying and then she ends up with the other guy and it was like, "Oh, this is why I've been like, torn between these 2 guys this whole time." It was a weird way to end it, but it did
Yeah,
end
you're
up
like,
happy. It was just not the happy you thought was
happy
coming.
we were expecting was coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my editor got on me a little bit the second book because it kind of ends a little bit cheesy, but I did it that way I did it purposely cheesy. I
Yeah.
wanted something just kind of fun at the end
Mhm.
because there'd been a lot of drama, dark drama. I kind of like to do the dark drama built in
Okay.
weaving in between the pretty
Yeah.
part to give it some more interest. But so yeah, so he had the drama there at the end. So I wanted something really light and fun at the end. She's like, "Okay, this is really cheesy, but if you're going for cheesy, that's fine." I
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, I was going for cheesy."
Yeah, and that's I mean, at the end of the day, in most romances, they meet, guy gets the girl, girl gets the guy, whichever way you wanna look at it. It's the difference is how they get from point A to point Z. Like,
Point
what
B,
was the journey
right?
throughout the whole thing? Like, what was the big conflict that tore them apart in the middle of the book? What was what did the family think the first time? Did they all love them immediately? Or was it, some big, oh my God, why did you bring her here moment? Like,
Right.
it's the journey is different in every book. And if the journey is not different, that means you're copying someone else and shame on you. Um,
Too, yeah.
but I
But
mean,
they
that's,
are similar because it was funny because I took an online class the other night on things that have to be in a romance novel
mhm.
because I thought it would be interesting. And so I took it and I was like writing notes and everything. And I was like, oh, okay, I did that. Cool, I did that. Oh, good, I did all these things and I didn't know I was doing them. So yay! So yeah, I'm actually doing it right.
It's weird seeing when people break it down for you, thinking about
Mhm.
like, did I do that? I'm trying to think what I saw someone was breaking down something. Oh, they were talking about like prologues and like how to start your book and all of this. And it was like, don't do this because it's been too overdone. And I'm like, but it works.
That's why it's
Like
overdone because
the books sell. That's the point of writing a book, not to be original completely. Follow the pattern that works and
pattern.
sells books.
That's what I got a review just yesterday. What did it say? I was laughing about it with one of my author friends because it said something about it followed this romantic trope, and I'm all going, yeah, that's kind of because it's a romance book, and that's what happened.
You
You
pick a
know, she
trope
gave me
and you follow it.
a it. Yeah, that's kind of the way it works. You know, I mean, it got a good review, but I thought that was funny. I'm like, okay, you're expecting not to have know what's kind of how it's going to go along once you get in the book. Like, okay, I don't know what else you're reading, but romance is a thing. It just kind of follow the trope.
Now, if you have it categorized in a different genre and someone's not, I
Yeah,
don't
I used
know,
to.
you haven't categorized as something not romance and then it ends up being a romance, that's poor category placement. But,
Yeah,
um, if you pick up a romance, you should expect a romance out of that.
right, exactly. Yeah, I just got finished reading one, and it was in romance. It's supposed to be a romance, and it was a clean romance, which is fine. A lot of people do those really well.
Mhm.
Um, but I was reading, and the majority, and it's a very short book, and majority of the book was this woman's father is being threatened because he's a DA, and his father's being threatened, and these people are coming after her and the family, trying to get
Mhm.
him not to prosecute this guy. And it was interesting, I don't some of the things she did. One of those, I've never picked up a gun thing, and she's writing about Navy SEALs, but okay. But
Yeah.
it wasn't. There was very little romance to it,
Yeah.
and it was clean on top of that. So I'm like, okay, I don't think I would actually call this a romance book
Yeah, more
just because
action and
I would
adventure it
call it more
sounds
action
like.
adventure or
Yeah.
yeah, something like that versus a romance. 'Cause there wasn't.
Mafia's a category.
Oh yeah, that's a big category. You get lots of virgin tropes in mafia too.
I don't know. I haven't quite figured out genre. So the one will clearly be mythology, which is a subgenre of fantasy. The other one, I
Yeah,
haven't quite figured out what genre that one's going to be. So it's whenever I get
yeah, and
back in
it's
that
hard too to
headspace.
figure that out. I know you have to figure it out, and then Amazon, of course, has all the secret categories that you don't know about that I didn't know about till I got what is it, Publisher Rocket? I think that's what it's called. But, uh, kind of an app that tells you you can go on and see where all these other people where they're placed under what. And there's stuff like Southern fiction, there's Southern women's fiction, there's medical drama, there's all these things you've never heard of.
Oh,
Because they let you pop up with like three of them. You can pick
yeah.
contemporary romance, women's fiction, women's literature, something like
Yeah.
chick lit or whatever. But they don't give you all those. So I found like a whole giant list of things um,
That you
that you
can
can go in and
also.
add to. Yeah,
Mm,
that you can add your books to, which is a trick through Amazon.
hmm. Sounds like
So
an
yeah,
annoying
Kazan has
trick.
it is an annoying trick, and then they don't give you that list when you pull up your book to see where your rank is.
Hmm.
You can only see the ranks that they decide to show you.
Yeah.
So I can be in 12 different categories, but I'm only going to see whatever
The
ones they
top
want to pull up
three
that
that they
day.
want to show you.
Yeah. So who knows? Who knows how the Zon works? And every time you try to think you figure it out, they change it. So
That's
make
how
it more complicated.
everything works though. When
It
you get it
is
figured out and they change the algorithm and you're like, "Well, how do I do it now? I don't know."
now. I know. I just learned how to do that and you're messing it up. What's going on?
I'm just like my approach to my approach to all social media, I should say, is I'm just going to be me and either
Mhm.
people are going to like that and follow me or people are not going to like that and not follow me. Like at the end of the day, like I
Yeah.
don't have the time to learn how to do something else. So,
Yeah, I know. And it's like, but it's really frustrating because they change the algorithms or something, or they change how many hashtags you can use, or they change,
mhm.
what, and you're going, okay, I don't have a full time social SEO person
Yeah.
to keep this up for me. So I just gotta kind of float along, do what I do, and hope it works, just like you.
Wait till I get an alert
Hope it gets
saying you're
there.
doing it wrong.
Wrong. Yeah. Somebody to tell me we should do this now. Okay, let's try that. I'll do that when I go.
Well, and some of those I don't know to believe them or not, because like, some I feel like they could just be trying to get you to do worse.
Yeah, than ever. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
just
don't.
don't know. But yeah, it's always like I said, it's a giant. The whole marketing thing is a giant learning curve that I just did not have any clue about or expect when I
Yeah.
started writing.
So how
And
did
so
you
that's something to
figure
know.
did you, like, Google to figure it out, or how did you end up figuring it out?
Mostly, once I got on, the basics. You got to need a Facebook page. You need to be
Yeah.
on Instagram. So I start looking at other people's stuff and seeing what they're doing.
Mhm.
And then, when I got into some groups and started meeting other authors and stuff, I'm like, hey, I saw you did this. How did you do that?
Mhm.
And they tell me how to do it or what app they did it on or, how to make
Mm.
it happen. So that's been the most helpful because I'll just be, sorry, newbie question. I'm
Yeah.
newbie here. How do I do that? What is that? And how do I do it? And where do I find it?
Yeah.
And then go figure it out. And that's been the biggest help. It's just other authors helping, you know, helping you figure it. Because
So you
otherwise,
must be in the helpful Facebook groups because, like,
I
I've
am.
heard some nightmare stories about authors not
Yeah,
being
well,
helpful.
and I really, like I said, I'm not on Facebook that much. I'm in several groups, but I'm not in it much. Mostly are Instagram groups
Mhm.
that I've gotten through there. Especially there's a small town romance lover group
Mhm.
that I somehow got into. I'm not even sure how I got into it to begin with, but I'm so glad I did. Met some really great people and helpful people through there that write, the subject adults. We're doing, countdowns to release. We're doing arc reading. Um,
Mhm.
we're making beta groups. We're doing, doing all these things. The first book that I had no idea.
Mhm.
But it just takes time. You can't learn it overnight. You're not going to. And you can just do what you can do. There's only so many hours in a day.
Right.
So, and even I've heard, even the people that are traditionally published these days have to do a lot of their own stuff too.
Yeah.
I've heard that it's not like it used to be where the publisher sends you out on a book tour, you know,
Yeah.
pays for everything. And I'm not, Sandra Bullock in Lost City, they don't send you out in the sparkly jumpsuit to market your book and pay for everything, and you have a publicist, and all that
Yeah.
stuff. I've heard even now, even if you're a traditionally published author, they're not spending the money and the time to do that for you unless you're somebody famous,
Yeah, unless you're already big.
right? Unless you're already big. If you're Diana Gabaldon, who I'm a total fangirl over,
Same.
um, they're gonna love her. I mean, I met her once. She's like the most famous person I've ever met, and I met her once in Richmond at a book thing they have every year there. She
Yeah.
was getting some award and giving a talk, and I went in there and saw her standing there, and I literally teared up. I thought I wasn't going to be able to speak. I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's her!" I've read these books for 20 years, and there she is.
Yeah.
It's herself. Um, so yeah, I was a big dork, but but she was so gracious and so nice. But yeah, so that's who I want to be when I grow up someday. But not write thousand word books that take 10 years between books to come out.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's my
that's
only
so
caveat.
I didn't get into it until the show was a couple seasons in, and then I watched the show and had to buy the books to see how the books
Yeah, don't
compared to
even
the
get me started
show.
on the show.
And so, like, I pretty much treat every and this is for every single book to movie to TV show, I just treat them as separate entities, um, and then I don't get mad. Uh,
It's so hard though when you've been reading something for a long time and you read it multiple times because
yeah.
we have huge discussions over okay, that didn't happen. Why is he still alive? He died the first book. Why is he there? That didn't happen. Why is she being such a bitch? That
Yeah,
didn't
I
happen.
just because I usually come across the TV show or the movie first. So then
Mhm.
I'm always like, let me read the book to see how it compares to what I've already seen. So
Right.
that's now I haven't gotten through the bees because I like plow. So this was last Christmas before last is when I got all the books. And so like
Yeah.
I read through them, but those are big books. So it took me a long time to read
And you
through them.
always have to reread them, and because you miss stuff every
Well, and
time.
then bees came out and I haven't gotten through bees yet because I had just plowed through the other 8 books. I'm like, I need a break.
Break. Yeah, you
So
gotta take a break.
I'm still on a break. And now I'm
Because when
listening
we know
through
something is coming out, but the trick is when you know something is coming out, kind of when she's going to have the next one out, you go back and start rereading the one before.
yeah.
So
Well, see,
you
I
can
read
pick, I
the
go,
8
okay, now I remember.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
read
yeah,
the
that's
8
too much.
before at one
Too
time.
much.
So
Overload.
and now I'm
That
listening
way
through
it's
the
overload.
audiobooks because it's like one of the top rated audiobooks of all
Oh, she
time
is
or whatever.
amazing. I got to meet her at that event too, Davina Porter.
Yeah.
She's just amazing.
Yes, I'm listening
And
through book 1
love
right
her.
now, but,
Yeah.
yes, I'm listening through the audiobooks, and hopefully I'll get through them all. I'm listening through on Scribd, so sometimes the books get pulled down before I finish them,
Yeah.
but we'll see because they just went up at the beginning of the month, so I might get lucky, but, they're like
Yeah, I
30-hour
would. I think I
books.
have them. Yeah, I think I have them all on Audible somewhere. Um, that I just hold on to till if I get in the mood. But
Yeah.
I've listened. I started listening to them when they were all on CD,
Oh, yeah.
and we had to put CDs in the car.
Yeah.
Get
I'd
them from the
started Harry
library.
Potter that way. I was
Yeah, it
delivery
takes
driving at the
forever.
time, and my car had the CD player in it, so I would
Yeah,
buy with my tip money from delivery driving, I would buy the next book, and
the
I would
next
listen to
CD.
that while I drove.
Oh, I know. And she's a very she's a wonderful person too. She was there and very nice. But yeah, I just love listening to anything. I mean, she reads. I don't know. I don't even know what else she narrates,
I've
but
other things. I
I'm
don't
sure she
know.
does. But I've only ever heard her reading Outlander. I haven't gone and looked it up. But I love her. She's one that I don't think about too much. The only thing that bothers me is her American accent. She does not do a good American accent.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
the one main character is from Boston. Brianna
Yeah. Yeah.
is from Boston and supposed to have a Boston accent. And I'm like, no, I love Davina, but no, that's not pulling out. Everything else, the men, the women, all over different, you know,
Yeah.
things she does. But that one thing,
Well,
not that one.
I need to get off.
All right,
So
that's fine, no problem.
but I wanted to
Oh,
say
no.
thank you very much for coming on here, and
Thank you
what
for having me. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
no problem, you have a good rest of your Saturday.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.
As she got older, Dallas liked Mulan, which she read with her kids, because she was such a strong person. Hua Mulan is a legendary folk heroine from the Northern and Southern Dynasties era, 4th to 6th century CE of Chinese history. According to legend, Mulan took her aged father's place in the conscription for the army by disguising herself as a man. In the story, after prolonged and distinguished military service against nomadic hordes beyond the northern frontier, Mulan is honored by the emperor, but declines a position of high office. She retires to her hometown, where she is reunited with her family and reveals her gender, much to the astonishment of her comrades. Scholars generally consider Mulan to be a fictional character. Hua Mulan is depicted in the Wu Shuang Pu by Jiang Juliang. Today we'll be reading The Homecoming, a story featuring another strong female, Athena. Don't forget, we're reading Le Morte d'Arthur, the story of King Arthur and of his noble knights of the Round Table on our Patreon. You can find the link in the show notes. The Homecoming. Now all these 20 years in the island of Ithaca, Penelope had watched for her husband's return, at first with high hopes, and then in doubt and sorrow. When news of the Great War came by some traveler, she had waited, eager and constant as a young bride. But now the war was long past. Her young son Telemachus had come to manhood, and as for Odysseus, she knew not whether he was alive or dead. For years there had been trouble in Ithaca. It was left a kingdom without a king, and Penelope was fair and wise. So suitors came from all the islands round about to beg her hand in marriage, since many loved the queen and as many more loved her possessions, and desired to rule over them. Moreover, everyone thought or said that King Odysseus must be dead. Neither Penelope nor her aged father-in-law Laertes could rid the place of these troublesome suitors. Some were nobles, and some were adventurers, but they all thronged the palace like a pest of crickets, and devoured the wealth of the kingdom with feasts in honor of Penelope and themselves and everybody else. And they besought the queen to choose a husband from their number. For a long time she would hear none of this, but they grew so clamorous in their suit that she had to put them off with craft, for she saw there would be danger to her country and her son and herself, unless Odysseus came home some day and turned the suitors out of doors. She therefore spoke them fair, and gave them some hope of her marriage to make peace. "Ye princely wooers," she said, "now I believe that the King Odysseus, my husband, must long since have perished in a strange land, and I have bethought me once more of marriage. Have patience, therefore, till I shall have finished the web that I am weaving, for it is a royal shroud that I must make against the day that Laertes must die, the father of my lord and husband. This is the way of my people," said she, "and when the web is done, I will choose another king for Ithaca." She had set up in the hall a great loom, and day by day she wrought there at the web, for she was a marvelous spinner, patient as Arachne, but dear to Athena. All day long she would weave, but every night in secret she would unravel what she had wrought in the daytime, so that the web might never be done. For although she believed her dear husband to be dead, yet her hope would put forth buds again and again, just as spring, that seems to die each year, will come again. So she ever looked to see Odysseus coming. 3 years and more she held off the suitors with this wile, and they never perceived it, for being men, they knew nothing of women's handicraft. It was all alike a marvel to them, both the beauty of the web and this endless toil in the making. As for Penelope, all day long she wove, but at night she would unravel her work and weep bitterly because she had another web to weave and another day to watch. All for nothing, since Odysseus never came. In the 4th year, though, a faithless servant betrayed the secret to the wooers, and there came an end to peace and the web too. Matters grew worse and worse. Telemachus set out to find his father, and the poor queen was left without husband or son. But the suitors continued to live about the palace like so many princes, and to make merry on the wealth of Odysseus, while he was being driven from land to land and wreck to wreck. So it came true, that prophecy that in the herds of the sun were harmed, Odysseus should reach his home alone in evil plight to find sorrow in his own household. But in the end he was to drive her forth. Now when Odysseus woke, he did not know his own country. Gone were the Phoenicians and their ship. Only the gifts beside him told him that he had not dreamed. While he looked about bewildered, Athena, in the guise of a young countryman, came to his aid and told him where he was. Then, smiling upon his amazement and joy, she shone forth in her own form and warned him not to hasten home, since the palace was filled with the insolent suitors of Penelope, whose heart waited empty for him as the nest for the bird. Moreover, Athena changed his shape into that of an aged pilgrim, and led him to the hut of a certain swineherd, Eumaeus, his old and faithful servant. This man received the king kindly, taking him for a travel-worn wayfarer, and told him all the news of the palace, and the suitors, and the poor queen, who was ever ready to hear the idle tales of any traveler, if he had aught to tell of King Odysseus. Now who should come to the hut at this time but the prince Telemachus, whom Athena had hastened safely home from his quest. Eumaeus received his young master with great joy, but the heart of Odysseus was nigh to bursting, for he had never seen his son since he left him, an infant for the Trojan War. When Eumaeus left them together, he made himself known, and for that moment Athena gave him back his kingly look so that Telemachus saw him with exultation, and they two wept over each other for joy. By this time, news of her son's return had come to Penelope, and she was almost happy, not knowing that the suitors were plotting to kill Telemachus. Home he came, and he hastened to assure his mother that he had heard good news of Odysseus, though for the safety of all he did not tell her that Odysseus was in Ithaca. Meanwhile, Eumaeus and his aged pilgrim came to the city and the palace gates. They were talking to a goat-herd there, where an old hound that lay in the dust heap nearby pricked up his ears and stirred his tail feebly as at a well-known voice. He was the faithful Argus, named after a monster of many eyes that once served Juno as a watchman. Indeed, when the creature was slain, Juno had his eyes set in the feathers of her pet peacocks, and there they glisten to this day. But the end of this Argus was very different. Once the pride of the king's heart, he was now so old and infirm that he could barely move. But though his master had come home in the guise of a strange beggar, he knew the voice, and he alone after 20 years. Odysseus, seeing him, could barely restrain his tears, but the poor old hound, as if he had lived but to welcome his master home, died that very same day. Into the palace hall went the swineherd and the pilgrim, among the suitors who were feasting there. Now how Odysseus begged a portion of meat and was shamefully insulted by these men. How he saw his own wife and hid his joy and sorrow, but told her news of himself as any beggar might. All these things are better sung than spoken. It is a long story. But the end was near. The suitors had demanded the queen's choice, and once more the constant Penelope tried to put it off. She took from her safe treasure chamber the great bow of Odysseus, and she promised that she would marry that one of the suitors who should send his arrow through 12 rings ranged in a line. All other weapons were taken away by the care of Telemachus. There was nothing but the great bow and quiver. And when all was ready, Penelope went away to her chamber to weep. But first of all, no one could string the bow. Suitor after suitor tried and failed. The sturdy wood stood unbent against the strongest. Last of all, Odysseus begged leave to try and was laughed to scorn. Telemachus, however, as if for courtesy's sake, gave him the bow, and the strange beggar bent it easily, adjusted the cord, and before any could stay his hand, he sped the arrow from the string. Singing with triumph, it flew straight through the 12 rings and quivered in the mark. "Now for another mark," cried Odysseus in the king's own voice. He turned upon the most evil-hearted suitor. Another arrow hissed and struck, and the man fell pierced. Telemachus sprang to his father's side. Eumaeus stood by him, and the fighting was short and bitter. One by one they slew those insolent suitors, for the right was theirs, and Athena stood by them, and the time was come. Every one of the false-hearted wooers they laid low, and every corrupt servant in that house, then they made the place clean and fair again. But the old nurse Eurycleia hastened up to Queen Penelope, where she sat in fear and wonder, crying, "Odysseus is returned! Come and see with thine own eyes!" After 20 years of false tales, the poor queen could not believe her ears. She came down into the hall bewildered, and looked at the stranger as one walking in a dream. Even when Athena had given him back his youth and kingly looks, she stood in doubt, so that her own son reproached her and Odysseus was grieved in spirit. But when he drew near and called her by name, entreating her by all the tokens that she alone knew, her heart woke up and sang like a brook set free in spring. She knew him then for her husband Odysseus, come home at last. Surely that was happiness enough to last them ever after. Thank you for joining Freya's Fairy Tales. Be sure to come back next week to hear A.K. Mulford's journey to holding her own fairy tale in her hands, and to hear one of her favorite fairy tales.